lift off in just about 7 minutes from now. Welcome to our 18th launch of the year and 45th Starlink mission overall. My name is Ian McCullough, and I'm a sales manager here at SpaceX. I'll be your host today as we follow Falcon 9's launch from Florida's Kennedy Space Center, Launch Complex 39A, the same launch pad that we launched NASA's Crew 4 mission from a little over a week ago. Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and manufactured by SpaceX. It provides high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations around the globe. Our launch today will be taking 53 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit, also referred to as LEO. We've got one of our shorter webcasts today, with live coverage ending just after first stage landing and second engine cutoff. Payload deploy is scheduled to occur at T plus 54 minutes after liftoff, and we'll confirm deployment of our Starlink satellites via SpaceX's social channels, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. If for some reason we don't launch today, we have a backup opportunity on Saturday, May 7th at 5:20 a.m. Eastern. Falcon 9 is the only orbital class rocket in the world capable of reuse, which means it's the only rocket that can boost its payload to orbit and then come back to Earth and be flown again. The part of the rocket responsible for powering these repeat trips to space is called the first stage. The dark soot you see around the lower part of the first stage are the remnants from its previous launches. This particular booster has supported 11 previous missions: Crew Demo 2, Anasis 2, CRS-21, Transporter 1 and 3, and 6 Starlink missions. For those following along, today's mission marks the 3rd time we are attempting to fly a booster for the 12th time. Although the number 9 in Falcon 9 references the 9 engines on the first stage, there are actually 10 engines on the rocket. The 10th engine powers the second stage, which is the portion of the rocket you see on your screen there. While the first stage powers us out of the Earth's atmosphere and into space, the second stage takes the satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit. After the first and second stages separate, the second stage will ignite its single Merlin vacuum engine to carry our satellites to low Earth orbit. Though very similar to the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage, the Merlin vacuum engine has a larger nozzle that allows the second stage to perform better in the vacuum of space. The Starlink satellites are housed at the very top of the rocket in a structure known as the fairing, right there. The job of the fairing is to protect the Starlink satellites until we reach the vacuum of space, and at that point we will jettison the fairing halves and attempt to retrieve them once they return to Earth. One of the fairing halves today, protecting our Starlink satellites today, will be flying for its 3rd time, while the other fairing half is flying for the 6th time. We have some experienced fairing halves for this mission. And if you're familiar with SpaceX, you'll know that that reusability is one of our top priorities, as it is key to reducing the cost of space access for all of us.
Thanks, Preston, for strong back retract.
The strong back retract. Following fairing deploy and stage separation, we will be attempting to recover the first stage for a 12th time on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. If successful, it will mark the 111th recovery of the Falcon 9 first stage. And the clamp arms are opening up. You just saw the strong back start to open its clamp arms, located right under the fairing there, just below the numbers on your screen. A strong back is part of the transporter erector, or TE. We use it to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position. The transporter erector also routes the vehicle's fluids, power, and telemetry umbilicals from the ground systems to the rocket and satellites until Falcon 9 goes on internal power and clears the pad. If you follow SpaceX, you'll know that it has been a very busy year for us so far. As I mentioned earlier, today's mission marks our 18th launch of the year. With reuse enabling our increased launch cadence, we've been able to support 1 launch per week on average. In April alone, we had a total of 6 launches, including 2 human spaceflight launches with AX-1 and Crew 4.
Stage 1 lock load complete.
Heard the call out for LOX load complete there. While Crew 4 just started their 6-month mission aboard space station, the AX-1 crew returned home at the end of last month. And late last night, SpaceX brought NASA's Crew 3 astronauts safely back to Earth after spending 177 days in space. During this time, they orbited the Earth 2,832 times and traveled 75,060,792 statute miles. While on the ISS, NASA astronauts Rajachari, Tom Marshburn, Kayla Barron, and ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer saw 8 vehicles arriving on station, 3 of which were Dragon vehicles. Crew 3 saw the arrival of CRS-24, Axiom 1, and of course Crew 4. We're happy to have the Crew 3 back home. We hope they had a successful journey, and we cannot wait to hear more about their trip. And we're seeing no signs of slowing down soon. In the past 12 months, we've added more than 40 commercial missions to our manifest that will launch in the next couple of years, and that's without any transporter or Starlink launches, so be sure to keep an eye out on our social channels for the latest SpaceX news.
Stage 2 lock flow complete.
With just 2 minutes left to go, Falcon 9 is moving on to the final stages of the countdown. We just heard that second stage LOX loading is complete, and we're about a minute out from the first stage taking over the launch countdown and going into an automated sequence. You can see those white clouds hanging out around the vehicle. It's chilled gas above the LOX tank, a liquid surface as we vent overboard to maintain pressure in the tank as needed. When the gas comes into contact with the warm Florida air, the humid, moist air condenses into clouds of water. About 5 seconds, we'll head up into startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
I heard the call out for startup. Let's listen in for the launch director to give go, or final go for launch.
Falcon 9, Starlink LD is go for launch.
Never heard the call out. All systems are go for launch. Let's launch as this
seconds.
Falcon 9 takes our 53 Starlink satellites into orbit.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. M1D chamber pressure is nominal.
And Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Launch Complex 39A, carrying our 53 Starlink satellites. Although at liftoff, gravity is pulling straight down on the rocket. As we ascend, we'll tilt the engines, technical term is gimbling, and that turns the rocket horizontally. We're still going up, but now we are also heading horizontally away from the launch pad. It's what we call a gravity turn. Moments ago, we throttled the engines down in preparation for max Q. We're in the throttle bucket.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
Max Q is the point during which the vehicle is under maximum dynamic pressure.
Max Q.
There, we've passed through max Q. Coming up are a quick series of events happening in quick succession. First, MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where the 9 Merlin engines on the first stage shut off to slow the vehicle down in preparation for the next milestone, stage separation. This is where the first stage separates from the second stage.
Start event back chill.
As the first stage starts to make its way back to Earth for landing, second stage continues its journey with SES-1, or second engine start 1. This is where the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage lights up and propels the second stage along with the Starlink satellites into orbit. About 30 seconds out from that MECO. As the rocket heads up into space, you'll start to see the plume at the aft end of the rocket begin to spread out. That's as the pressure alleviates from the bottom of the vehicle. You can there isn't as much pressure holding in that plume. There we saw main engine
MECO.
cutoff. Call out for MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
And back ignition.
Bearing separation confirmed.
And we just saw main engine cutoff, stage separation, second engine startup, and fairing deploy. With the fairing halves separated, the satellites are now exposed to the vacuum of space above the second stage of the rocket on the right-hand side of your screen there. While the second stage is doing its job, the first stage is coming back home to Earth and will execute 2 burns. The first is the entry burn. It's a 3-engine burn that helps to slow the stage down. The second burn is the landing burn. It's a single-engine burn that helps bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on our drone ship a short fall of gravitas, which is the equivalent to a size of a football field. If you're just joining us, we had a successful
Both vehicles
liftoff.
are on nominal trajectories.
We had a successful liftoff from Launch Complex 39A, completed a main engine cutoff, stage separation, second engine start 1, and fairing deploy. And now the second stage is taking our 53 Starlink satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit in low Earth orbit, while the first stage is making its way back home for the 12th time. On the left side of your screen there, the first stage is descending.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
The Falcon 9 first stage is equipped with 4 landing legs made of carbon fiber with aluminum honeycomb. These are placed symmetrically and stowed at the base of the vehicle and deployed just prior to landing. Also on the left-hand side here, you'll see the Falcon 9 is also equipped with 4 hypersonic grid fins, 2 of which are in view. These are positioned near the top of the first stage and the base of the interstage. Stage 1 is using nothing but the grid fins for steering as it makes its return to Earth until we light the center engine for landing. Then we can gibble the engine and guide the stage. The grid fins orient the rocket during re-entry and then guide the rocket during descent. Also look out, you may see some puffs, some white puffs on the left side of the screen. Those are nitrogen gas bursts for attitude control. Really cool view of the first stage on the left-hand side there. Some small debris in the atmosphere.
Both stages continue to follow nominal trajectories.
I heard a call out for both stages are on nominal trajectories. As we come up on the start of entry burn in about 40 seconds here, just a reminder that that's a 3-second burn meant to slow the first stage down as it hits the thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Right-hand side of the screen got a great view of stage 2 heading out into Leo. Is that sunrise on the left-hand side of the screen there? Coming up on entry burn.
Stage 1, FDSS.
Stage 1, entry burn, startup.
Stage 1 has lit its engines to slow down for entry into the Earth's atmosphere. This burn will last about 20 seconds.
Stage 1, entry burn, shut down.
As we previously mentioned, you were able to see some soot markings on this booster left over from previous flights. Here's a quick explanation of how that soot forms. The rocket-grade kerosene RP1 is used to fuel Falcon 9 as a carbon-based fuel. When the fuel burns, it generates soot. And because re-entry occurs engines first, the booster flies through its own plume, which then deposits the soot on the outside of the rocket.
Both vehicles are on nominal trajectories.
You continue to hear we're on nominal trajectories. That's a good sign right here. As we come up on landing, you'll be able to look potentially and see some of that soot sticking to the cameras. As I mentioned before, reusability is one of our top priorities because as it's key to reducing the cost of space access for all of us. By reusing the high-cost components of the rocket...
Stage 1, transonic.
including the first stage and the fairings, we lower the overall launch cost to just the new components and the fuel and oxidizer. As a reminder, this is the 12th launch of this booster, having previously flown missions Crew Demo 2, Anasis 2, CRS 21, Transporter 1, and 3, and 6 previous Starlink missions. Just a moment here, we'll be coming up on landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn.
So stage 1 has begun its landing burn. This is its final burn before touchdown to land on the drone ship. This burn lasts about 20 seconds as well. I'll look at that, a clear view.
Landing leg deploy.
Beautiful.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And stage 1 has successfully landed on our drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. This is the 111th
Stage 2
recovery of a
FTSA.
Falcon 9 first stage booster. That's listening for SECO 1, or second engine cutoff 1.
SECO. Expected loss of signal, Cape. Nominal parking orbit insertion.
And we heard nominal parking orbit insertion. That's good orbit. With confirmation of a successful second engine cutoff and good orbit, we'll be ending our webcast for today's launch. For those of you who want to keep following this mission, we will be confirming payload deploy via our social channels. Thank you to the Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's mission. Of course, thank you to our viewers for turning in bright and early, and big thank you to our Starlink customers for using our service at this time. I hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll see you soon.